Eagles Entertainment.
With the 15th pick in the NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select.
You're listening to the Journey to the Draft podcast.
Welcome to the Journey to the Draft podcast, presented by Life Brand. I'm your host, Fran Duffy, and we're going to continue our preview for the Scouting Combine out in Indianapolis, where today we're going to focus in on the defensive side of the football. Earlier this week, Ben Fennell, Dane Brugler, and I broke down the top prospects on offense. Well, today, for Draft Buzz, we are joined by Ben Fennell once again and Jordan Reid from ESPN. We're going to focus on the defensive side of the football. Who are the prospects you need to know as we get closer and closer to the trip to Indianapolis for the Combine? We're going to cover it all right here on the show. Almost 100 names we hit on here in today's program. After that, we're going to get to Draft Mailbag. We've got a trade down scenario for the Eagles in the NFL Draft. We'll talk through that from a fan question. And the best way to reach us, if you've got a question just like that, head on over to our Apple Podcast page. Leave us a rating, leave us a review. If you've got a question, that's where you can go and leave it. If you've got a mock draft or a big board or player rankings, anything you want us to comb through, that is the place to reach us. Go on over to Apple Podcasts, really wherever you listen. If it's Spotify or Stitcher, anywhere where you can leave us a rating and leave us a comment, we will break down your rankings. We will answer your question, whatever it is. Leave it over in that section. We will get to it here on an upcoming episode. Before we get started, I also want to make sure I tease our Combine cheat sheets, which are out over on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. We're going position by position every single day. I'm recording this Wednesday afternoon. So at this point, we have already seen the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. On Thursday morning, the offensive line will go out. We're going to see defensive ends, defensive tackles, all the rest of those defensive positions go from now all the way up through the middle of next week for the Scouting Combine. So make sure you go check those out. I'll be tweeting them out on my Twitter account at EaglesXOs, but you can find them over on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, the Eagles mobile app, all of your Eagles digital channels. So those are the Combine cheat sheets. That said, let's get into this. We've got a bunch of players to cover here with Jordan Reid and Ben Fennell. It's time for Draft Buzz.
Now it's time for Draft Buzz.
Well, excited to get things rolling here with Jordan Reid and with Ben Fennell. Guys, let's get into it. We're going to get into a lot of players once again today as we preview the Scouting Combine, which starts next week out in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. We're going to once again go position by position. We've got a handful of superlatives we're going to hit with every single one of these. And again, we are going to preface this entire discussion with say that the Combine is much, much more than just what we see on TV, just what happens on the field at the stadium. It's going to be obviously the interviews are huge. The medical exams are going to be huge for all of these players in attendance. But we're going to talk about what we can see from the outside looking in, and that's going to be the athletic testing and the position work. And we'll start with the defensive tackle position. And we're going to start there first with the athletic testing portion. Who works out the best? Who are we expecting to put up really impressive athletic test scores? And I'm going to go with the guy that really stood out down in Mobile, guys, and that's Perrion Winfrey, the defensive tackle from Oklahoma. This is a guy with an explosive first step. He's quick. He's violent. He's got that disruptive skill set on the interior. You watch that Oklahoma defense. Every single time they take the field, Winfrey was one of the best guys out there. And it just showed that he just kind of raised the level of the guys around him with the intensity that he played with. I would expect that he's going to continue building on that momentum that started down in Mobile, Alabama, and will continue, I believe, here in Indianapolis. Jordan, who's the guy for you? Who do you think is going to work out really well out in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I'm going to go with another player that really stood out in Mobile, and that's Devonte Wyatt, defensive tackle from Georgia. I think he's going to be very explosive in Indianapolis. And with him, I think Jordan Davis got a lot of the love, and he kind of was the glue guy of that defense. But Wyatt and also Jalen Carter along the middle, those were two players that were phenomenal a season ago. So I really like Wyatt and what he's going to bring to the table. I think he's going to run very well, and I think he's probably going to jump very well too. And he's a good change of direction type of athlete too. So 3 cones, short shoulder, I think he's going to perform really well in Indy.
Yeah, I think
those are two good picks there with two guys with, great get-offs, first steps, and the change of direction. Usually those translate to all the combine tests and movement pattern drills. I'm going to go with a bit of a hybrid player, which there's a bunch of them in this class. We don't really know whether they're an edge or an inside guy or whether there's going to be a hybrid. And that's Trayvon Walker, who I expect to be one of the bigger conversations in Indy next week. And a big question, is he going to be in the 270 range or pushing the 290 range? I don't really think that conversation is that important because he's going to be used with a multiple front team. He's going to play some inside, play some outside. And this guy can boogie and move at that size. And he's really going to turn some heads. So Trayvon Walker, big 44 for Georgia. Expect him to be one of the better testers next week.
Real quick, Jordan, do you view him as an interior guy? Do you view him as an edge guy? Like, which bucket are you kind of putting him in with at this point in the process until we get the official measurements next week?
Yeah, I'm glad we get to talk about him a little bit just because I think he's one of the more polarizing prospects in this class, just because Georgia didn't really allow him to hunt the quarterback in a sense. He played kind of those tight five techniques. He played a little bit inside too. So he's really a tough projection. I think he's probably an edge right now, but his testing is really going to clear a lot of things up for me. But you're betting on the traits with him, but we've seen guys like this in the past, whether it's a Daniil Hunter or even going back to last year with a Odafe Oweh. Now, Walker plays a little bit more inside than some of those guys did, and he's such a projection at 6'5", 275 pounds. So I'm really looking to see how he tests. He's one of the more prospects that I'm going to be paying attention to.
Yeah, he was one of those guys going in where, obviously I know the hybrid skill set, right? A guy that lines up inside, outside, but watching the film and just getting a chance to see what his usage was like. It's not often that you see defensive tackles, I should say, drop in coverage as often as Walker was asked to do. I mean, he's dropping as like a seam curl player and underneath zone coverage and trying to intersect crossing routes and forcing interceptions. Like not a lot of D tackles, are doing that. So I couldn't help but keep him with my edge group. That said, like Ben said, if he shows up in the 290s or something along those lines, that means he's embracing more that move more to the interior. And if that's the case, he'll be one of the freakier guys at that position. So it'll be really
but guys, it's like trying to designate Cam Jordan. Is he an edge or a D tackle? You go to a more multi-front team, nobody cares. He's going to play up and down the line. So, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New Orleans, one of those teams that will just interchange their D tackles and D ends, I think would be a perfect landing spot for a Trayvon Walker.
All right,
I think it was the Florida game of where he dropped back in coverage and he forced the tip pass over the middle was an interception. So little things like that make you so intrigued with him with the traits.
Jordan, there was all sorts of weird usages because they love to blitz those backers. So a lot of times D tackles are dropping out. Devonte Wyatt, QB spine, Trayvon Walker dropping into the hook curl lanes. A lot of unique uses for those big guys up front.
All right, well, let's get to the next category here, guys. A stopwatch shocker, someone who's going to impress us with their workout that maybe people aren't necessarily expecting going into the week. Jordan, we'll start with you.
So I kind of went with a little bit of a wild card, and this may wow both of you guys a little bit. I actually went with Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle from Georgia, staying with that Georgia defense. And when I was thinking about who I wanted to select for this, that play against UAB of where he started in the A-gap and he chased down the quarterback all the way on the sideline. And if we're talking about a player with just straight line linear speed, I think Jordan Davis could run somewhere in the low 5.0 range. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And if you're talking about a guy at 6'6", 350 pounds running in the low fives, that's going to be a stopwatch shocker for sure.
Ben, you had an interesting tweet about Jordan Davis this week, just talking about his skill set. And people kind of have this thought that, he's just a run stuffer, two-gapper. But you have a kind of different take on what his usage could be in the NFL.
Yeah, as I was kind of studying him and trying to find some projections, I've completely come off of he's not this line of scrimmage dwelling fat guy, two-gapper that he's just plugging up lanes for backers to run free. This is a playmaking disruptor. And I think I want him in more of a single gap scheme, for him to shoot gaps and use some quickness off the ball. And he has exceptional range. I think he's a very unique prospect. And while we're kind of trained to think about Danny Shelton's and Vita Vea's, I think we need to be talking about Akeem Hicks's and guys like that and Stephen Tuitt's of the world that are just massive human beings that disrupt blocking schemes and get into backfields. I think he has a lot more upside as a disruptor than people maybe think in that 6'6", 360 frame.
All right, well, Ben, let's give us your stopwatch shocker for the D tackles.
Yeah, I'm going to go with another big guy that you just may not think these big 330, 340 guys are going to bookie, whether it's the UCLA kid or the Kentucky kid, Marquand McCall. But I'm actually going to go with Travis Jones out of UConn, who at 335, I think is a bit of a dancing panda type of nose tackle with a good first step. And I expect him to kind of be in that low 5'0", 5'1" type of range for a big guy, right? Where kind of Dontari Poe had tested. So I expect him to be a bit of a darling at that size.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit opposite of the way you guys went. You guys went with a couple of the big hulking nose tackles. I'm going to go with Haskell Garrett from Ohio State, who, he's probably one of the more prototypical three techniques in this class. And I think that he shows that quick first step. He can cross face and disrupt, whether it's run game, pass game. He's got some production to go with it, a fifth-year senior who's got that ability to be that disruptive presence on the inside. I do think he's a little bit underrated overall, and I think the athleticism will show up. So we'll see how Haskell Garrett tests overall out in Indianapolis. Indianapolis. Let's get to the next category here. Trust the tape. This is a guy that we're not expecting to necessarily blow it up when it comes to the athletic testing, but if he doesn't, that doesn't mean that we want to knock this guy too much. Ben, we'll come to you first.
There's two guys I just wanted to mention really quick, and they're both in a very similar hybrid no man's land kind of landing spot, but they're good football players. They're just not twitchy. They're not going to test well. We'll put on the tape anytime they're on the field, whether it was in play or maybe an all-star game last week. Zachary Carter and Isaiah Thomas. I think they're both outstanding hybrid football players. I don't think are going to look good in movement pattern drills, aren't going to look good in a straight line, aren't going to look good changing directions. But these are versatile players that are strong at the point of attack, that can get after the passer in a variety of ways, typically through strength and power. Doesn't always translate here onto the combine testing. So Zachary Carter, Florida, Isaiah Thomas, Oklahoma, who I think quietly had one of the better Senior Bowl weeks that didn't get a lot of buzz. But two interesting players there.
It's funny. I had two names written down for this category, and there were two guys that you guys talked about in the previous section with the stopwatch shockers. It was Jordan Davis and Travis Jones. And I look at these two guys, two of the better pure nose tackles in this draft. And I think when you look at it, like both of them are really nimble and have that ability to impress us. But if they don't, I don't think we should crush them, because that's not necessarily, their game isn't necessarily based on their quickness and their ability to be that kind of player, right? So if either of those guys don't test super well, I don't know that should necessarily kill them when it comes to their overall draft stock. Jordan, round us out here. Who do you like here for this category?
And I stayed in the SEC. I went with Fedarian Mathis from Alabama, and he's a player that improved significantly from a pass rush standpoint. He was always a great run defender during his first 3 years at Alabama, but the big question mark that everybody had coming into the year was, can he provide more value as a pass rusher? And he was able to do that, had 9 sacks a year ago. Unfortunately got hurt in the national title game, but he was playing really well up until that point. He had the big run stuff up in the first quarter. So with Mathis, he isn't an overly twitchy type of player. He has short area bursts, good quickness, but as far as long type of range and being able to change directions, he isn't great there. But if he can go to a 2-gap scheme, I think he could be a 3 technique, or he can be a 4-eye or 4 technique, whether it's Baltimore or Pittsburgh or somewhere like that. I think he can hold up really well either one of those spots, or predominantly 3-down defense.
It's a great call. He's a perfect fit for this category. Exactly. Athleticism, not a hallmark of Mathis's game, but that doesn't mean that he's a bad player. Let's get to the next one. Off the radar guy that we're just excited to see work out for me. I'm going to go with UCLA defensive tackle Otito Ogbonia. This guy who went down to the Senior Bowl. He was on the freak list over the summer, so I don't know that the athleticism is necessarily not talked about, but this is a guy who's really quick on his feet. Wasn't asked to be a disruptor in that 3-4 scheme out there at UCLA. He has got outstanding length. I think he's got a body type that is built for today's game. I've compared him in the past to former Eagles nose tackle Benny Logan. I think he's got a very similar kind of skill set, probably a little bit more juice than Benny had coming out of LSU when he was a 3rd-round pick. So I'm going to look at Ogbonia as a guy I'm really excited to see work out. You guys both saw how he flashed down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Jordan, let's come to you next. Who do you like here?
So I went with a player that was a little bit under the radar, and I saw him play in the East-West Shrine game, and I thought he was fantastic during all days of practice, and it's Matthew Butler from Tennessee. I think he's going to perform really well. He's a little bit off the radar right now, got a lot of buzz at East-West Shrine in Vegas, and he created a nice buzz for himself, but he still kind of seems to be in that second tier of this class. I think the strength of this interior D-line class comes on day 2. Maybe he's that guy that could go late 3rd or early 4th. I think that's a fair range for him if he performs really well up in Indy.
Yeah, a pure 3 technique through and through. And I'm glad you brought him up, because he's a guy I would say definitely under the radar for most people at this point. Ben, who do you like here for this category?
Well, this group is dominated by Power 5 and Group of 5 players, as it usually is, and rightfully so. So I'd be remiss to not mention Big Noah Ellis coming out of Idaho out there. And that's every bit of Big Noah Ellis, because he is a big boy there at, I think, 6'4", 340 or whatever it is. I'm hoping him and Jordan Davis can go back-to-back in the drills. I see a couple names there with the last names potentially ruining that, like Kalia Davis from UCF, but we'll see. That would just be 2 massive players to watch in back-to-back. Noah Ellis out of Idaho. This is a 340-pound nose tackle that lines up in a track stance, a staggered stance. He is looking to shoot and fly across the line of scrimmage and just blow up backfields. He is a lot of fun to watch, a bit of a raw kind of ball of clay right now, but he brings some things you just cannot teach. So now let's see if we could coach him and refine the game.
Big time recruit coming out of high school, had offers from everybody, initially committed to Mississippi State, ends up at Idaho. His dad, the all-pro Luther Ellis, who was a longtime player in the NFL.
I think his brother, Caden Ellis, landed somewhere as well, too.
Yeah, Caden Ellis is in New Orleans, and his other brother, Christian, is actually here with the Eagles. He's was one of the guys that signed a futures contract with the team after the season. Let's get now to the last category for the D tackles. Who helps themselves most with a huge performance on the field, on the track? Jordan, I'll come to you first.
I'm going to go with Logan Hall from Houston. And he's created some really nice buzz for himself. I think he did really well down in Mobile. You saw him and Cole Strange go back and forth in those one-on-one battles. And little notes like that is what scouts really take into account, especially when you're talking about a player's competitiveness, his drive, and then what really drives them. So Logan Hall is a player that I think is going to help himself a lot. We saw Peyton Turner go in the first round, who was his teammate at Houston a season ago. So Logan Hall at about 6'5", 275 pounds. I think that's probably where he's going to come in at. A little bit of a tweener like we see a lot in this class, whether it's a Josh Paschal or a Zach Carter, as we mentioned a little bit earlier. So he can play in a 3-down or a 4-down front. I think he has that versatility, but I expect his numbers to be really great.
He's a really impressive athlete, and whether you want to put him with the edges or with the D tackle, similar kind of player to what we were talking about earlier with Trayvon Walker. Hall's an impressive athlete. Ben, how about you?
Well, we've already mentioned him, but just to stamp home what I'm expecting next week and his buzz and stock and trajectory just to continue on this rise, because he was chained up in the yard for a long time in college, and now he's loose, and now he's showing everything. And that's Devonte Wyatt, who I really think his best play is flashes of Jarrell Casey. And I can just picture him doing the 4-bag drill and being this giant 300-pound dancing panda with light feet. I think he's going to be one of the darlings on and off the field in Indy and continue that strong week he showed at the Senior Bowl. Now that he can spread his wings and show everything he can provide to an NFL team, not be held back by that national championship defense and Kirby Smart. Crazy to say that. I think he has a lot more upside than we have scratched the surface yet. So Devonte Wyatt, we've already talked about him, but just to stamp that home, he's going to be a big winner.
If I had first pick, I would have gone Devonte Wyatt, Ben. For a lot of the reasons you said. I mean, he went down to the Senior Bowl and caught a lot of buzz, started generating some of that upward mobility with what his draft stock could look like. If he has a big week in Indy, that's just going to continue to build. I'm going to go with the guy on the opposite end of the spectrum, and that's a guy that if you go back to last spring, you go to the summer, you go through the fall. DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M was a guy that was in everybody's mock draft and really in the top 10, top 12 of most mock drafts. Now you're starting to hear more of a day 2 player, and that might be fair based off the film. But if he goes to Indy and he has a huge week, whether it's the drills, interviews, you go through obviously the athletic workout, he has a huge week. Maybe you start to get a little bit more buzz there for DeMarvin Leal, who's kind of another one of these hybrid players, DN, D tackle from A&M, 6'4". He's in that 290 range. So is he best inside? Is he best outside? I'm still looking at him more as an interior player, but this is a guy that, like I said, was in the top half of every round 1 mock draft. And we haven't talked about him yet with this D tackle group. I think that kind of speaks to that buzz or the lack thereof with DeMarvin Leal as we sit here in late February. Let's now transition to the edge group, and we'll talk about the guy that is going to work out best. Who are we expecting a big workout from? We know that this edge rush group is probably the best overall in this class. Ben, who's going to stand out? Who's going to be the workout warrior from this group?
Well, this may be a boring answer, but I love how these conversations come full circle. But look out for Kayvon Thibodeau, who I think has a full skill set to play in space and play in a phone booth. I think he's going to look loose. He's going to look fast. He's going to look quick-footed. And just remind everyone that he is a absolute playmaking, explosive edge rusher, whether you want to play him in a stand-up or a 4-point stance. I think he has a lot to show. And I think he's really, really eager to get on the field and show those kind of loose movement pattern drills. So maybe the boring answer, and I love that number 1 picks kind of get knocked down and out of sight, out of mind. And now we have to hype them back up. I think Kayvon Thibodeau will get back on the throne as being obviously a solidified top 3 prospect in this class.
Yeah, from a guy that was the top 3 player in every mock draft coming into the year to a guy that was not on first-round mock drafts coming into the season, but really cemented his claim to be a top 32 selection. That's Jermaine Johnson, the defensive end from Florida State. I think when you look at Johnson, what he did this year in his first year at Florida State, he was ACC Defensive Player of the Year, transferred from Georgia, where he was a backup for the last 2 seasons. He's long, he's explosive, he's really fluid, he can turn the corner, he can win in a bunch of different ways. But I think when you look at his size and athleticism profile, I think it's going to be really, really impressive. We watched the way this kid moves. We saw it up close down in Mobile, just really, really impressive those first couple days in practice. I think you look at Jermaine Johnson, he's a guy that should test pretty well out in Indianapolis. Jordan, who's the guy that stands out to you?
Yeah, so I kind of classify this guy as the edge outside linebacker. You can go back and forth with that, but I went with David Ojabo from Michigan. I think he's gonna light the combine on fire. And if you guys remember how we were wowed by Brian Burns and just how loose he moved around, how well he caught the ball, backpedaling, and things like that, I think David Ojabo is going to put on the show. I'm really looking forward to seeing him in Indy.
He was a guy I nearly went with Ojabo, and it was down to him and Johnson. And Ojabo is just a really, really fascinating player. He played, like 26 snaps or something on defense coming into the season, ends up with double-digit sacks opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Just an outstanding year from David Ojabo, the redshirt sophomore from the Wolverines. Let's get to the next category here. Stopwatch shocker. Who's going to impress us with their workout? Maybe off the radar at this point. I don't think there's anybody that fits this bill better than UAB defensive end Alex Wright. 6'7", 270 pounds. This guy looks like an Adonis. And then when the ball is snapped, this guy is a freight train. He is a locomotive off the tracks. He's so explosive. He closes so fast. He's got power in his body to be able to push the pocket. But you just watch this kid in the open field. And I remember that I was like 2 or 3 plays in. I was like, oh man, this guy is going to wow people in Indianapolis. So Alex Wright, UAB, keep an eye out for him. He's going to be a guy that we're going to be buzzing about in about a week or so from now at this point out in Indianapolis. Jordan, who's a pick here for you?
Yeah, and I thought this guy was phenomenal in Mobile, and just hearing the reviews about him from the Detroit Lions coaching staff, talking to some people there, and it's D'Angelo Malone from Western Kentucky. He's just so loose in his movements, just a natural given pass rusher as far as his ability, really strong hands. Needs to improve at the point of attack as far as a run stopper. I think that's probably the big weakness in his game right now. But if you're talking about one of the most gifted pass rushers and bend in this class, he definitely has it.
349 career tackles. That's more than any pass rusher in the last 10 years, drafted in the last 10 years. 53 starts in his career as a fifth-year senior, 40 career sacks, 32 and a half career sacks, 40 hits, 103 quarterback hits in his career. Just a really, really impressive resume for D'Angelo Malone. But like you said, at 6'3", 230 pounds, the usage is going to be interesting. Ben, let's go to you.
Yeah, 2 names really quick that I think may surprise us a little bit. I think Jesse Luketa is going to be a really interesting athlete to watch with a hybrid skill set. And look out for big Sam Williams out of Ole Miss, who ran 4.4 in high school, has not been shy about tweeting at me that he's never run a 4.5 in his life. Also a 40-inch vertical in high school. I expect him to test very similar to the way Vic Beasley did a few years ago, jumping 41 inches, a 10-10 broad, 4.5 340, which Sam Williams is saying he'll be in the 4.4s there. I think he's going to be one of the surprising testers. And you see it on tape when he wants to hit it, and you could see that explosive gear and chasing plays to the sideline. Really interesting player. I'm glad he got the late call up to the Senior Bowl last week or a few weeks ago.
I, like Sam Williams, I've never run a 4.5 40, so we've got that in common. Let's get to our trusted tape here. Don't expect this guy to blow up the athletic testing, but that's okay based off what the film says this player is. Jordan, you can kick us off here.
I went with Cameron Thomas from San Diego State, one of the most highly productive players in this class from an edge standpoint. Multiple double-digit sack seasons. I mean, he was unbelievable this year as far as his ability, but he doesn't strike me as a guy that's super explosive. I mean, he shows he's fast off of the ball in the game, but he's more of a technician, and he just knows how to win. He just has a knack for winning off of the edge. They played him inside quite a bit too, played some 3 technique, even slid some inside and played some shade 1 technique as well. Just create some disadvantageous matchups for blockers along the interior. But I don't expect him to light up the combine or even have marginal testing. I think he's probably going to be one of the more low-end testers in this group, but he's one of those guys you have to trust the tape with just because he just understands how to generate pressure and get to the quarterback.
It's a great call. Perfect fit for this category. Ben, I know you've been high on Thomas, but who's the player that fits this bill for you?
I'm going to go Arnold Ebiketie, who I'm not sure is going to be a linear, explosive type of guy. He's another one that's a bit of a technician, has a multitude of ways to get to the quarterback with counter moves and has that 3-way go, but very much a pass rushing technician. with not a whole lot of God-given, abilities and traits, which is okay. I just don't think he'll wow you in any particular drill or movement pattern exercise, but he's a guy, like Jordan had mentioned a second ago, he's just a guy that knows how to get after the quarterback. And as he's on the field, whether it was Temple or this last year with Penn State, consistently generates pressure on opposing quarterbacks in a variety of ways. Typically, that translates to the NFL.
Yeah, let's see how Ebiketie tests. Obviously, coming from Penn State, those guys are going to be ready to go for Indianapolis. For me, I'm going to stick in the Big Ten. George Karlaftis from Purdue, one of the more highly debated players in this class, 6'4", 275 pounds. He was on the freak list last summer. Now, the numbers that Bruce Feldman supplied, 4.69 in the 40-yard dash, 121 inches in the broad jump, those are above average numbers, pretty good numbers. 37 inches in the vert, that's a very good number, especially for 275 pounds. Nothing on the agilities, though, right? And that's going to be the question, I think, with Karlaftis is how can he turn the corner? Does he have that ability to bend and show that lateral movement? I don't know that that's a strength of his game. And if he doesn't test super well there, I don't know that I'm going to knock it, because that's a question you have when you watch the film. I think you see a guy on film who is strong. He's powerful. He's got that first step. Karlaftis, that's the way that he's built. That's fine. If he doesn't test well in the agilities, I don't think that should crush him too much when it comes to his draft stock. But speaking of the agilities, one position specific drill where we do see that on display, the figure 8 drill. And everybody loves these bendy pass rushers. And basically in the figure 8, it's exactly what it sounds. There's 2 giant hula hoops on the field, and they got to turn and run both of those hoops. We saw this back in 2020 as a new drill. Ben, I'm not even sure if they're running this drill again this year, but if they do, who's the guy you expect to test really well or look really good in this drill?
They are running this drill again.
Beautiful.
I'll be using Robert Quinn as a NFL example. So one of the best high side rushers of bend and flexibility. Now, the interesting thing, this drill was done off to the side at the Senior Bowl. So if you guys were watching or had your hands on some cameras and some melts, you can watch quite a bit of Senior Bowl participants do this drill, not only on a dry day, but a wet day. And I wasn't overly impressed with anybody down there. So I'm actually going to go with David Ojabo, who I think has that looser lower half. I know we had mentioned him earlier. As long as he's not having to hold the point of attack in a drill, I'm probably going to pick Ojabo to be one of the more impressive players in this class. So a guy that I think is going to look outstanding in nearly every drill, particularly anything showing off his flexibility and change of direction.
Yeah, I'll stay in the junior class. I'm going to go out to Oklahoma with Nick Benito, 6'3", 240 pounds is what he's listed at. We'll see what he comes in at in Indy. But when you look at Nick Benito, he is all kinds of athletic. He has just got really impressive traits across the board. Laterally, linearly, he moves really well in reverse. But I think the big thing when you watch him, he corners so well off the edge. And that first step and that ability to get the edge on offensive tackles, that is his bread and butter. I would expect in the figure 8 drill, he should look really, really good. So Nick Benito, undersized, and the scheme will be important for him. But I think Benito will be a good fit there. Jordan, who do you like here for this one?
Yeah, I actually have 2 names, and we talked about Sam Williams quite a bit. I think this drill was specifically made for him, especially with how he's able to reduce his surface area and just corner to the quarterback. But one name I did want to mention is Boy Mafe from Minnesota, who's created a significant amount of buzz for himself, especially going down and playing well at Mobile. Just his knack for being able to shave the corner of the pocket and then just being able to get to the quarterback. I think this type of drill was made for him, especially being able to go down and grab those towels off of the ground. He's just a natural for this drill.
So let's go with an off-the-radar selection for each of us, guys. I'm going to start with Dominique Robinson from Miami, Ohio. 0 starts in his career. Converted wide receiver. He made the move during COVID-19, made the move to the defensive side of the ball full-time. Always came off the bench for the Redhawks. But I think when you look at Robinson, he's a guy that fits really well in that figure 8 drill as well. He's really, really athletic. Saw some really good flashes, especially early in the week down at the Senior Bowl, where he can go speed to power. But I think his athletic workout will be really, really impressive. Again, undersized, former wide receiver making the move to pass rusher, but he's got traits that work really, really well. Jordan, who's an off-the-radar guy for you?
Yeah, so this is one guy we have not heard anything from just because he was supposed to play in the Senior Bowl, but he got hurt in the bowl game. And his name is Osagie Otomoa from Minnesota. And I'm still in Ben's comp here of Dayo Odeyingbo. He reminds me a lot of him, who was a second-round pick from the Colts last year that ended up tearing his Achilles, I believe it was. So we didn't get to see him test or anything like that. But Osagie Otomoa, I like him a lot. Really underrated. Cut on the tape against Ohio State. You see him holding at the point of attack. He's creating havoc on the rusher. At 6'6", 280 pounds, I just think he's made to be in that Calais Campbell type of role in a 3-4 front. So I'm really excited to see him test. And he was one name I was really looking forward to at the Senior Bowl, but he didn't end up getting to play just because I believe he had a shoulder injury.
Yep, 6'6", 285, impressive body type. We'll see what he's able to do out in Indianapolis. Ben, how about you here?
Yeah, it's crazy that Deo was taken as a second-round pick despite having the Achilles injury as well. I think just speaks to the upside and the freakiness of that height, weight, speed. So Minnesota kid is similar. I want to go with Myron Tagliavoa-Mosa at Notre Dame. And a lot of people may say, who? That's Myron Tagliavoa. That's right. I think cousin of Tua Tagliavoa, if I'm not mistaken, hyphen Mosa. So he's a guy that's a really interesting player. He looks like a bit of a refrigerator and a brick, but he is all sorts of wound up, can play inside, outside, has spin moves and little jumping cross chops and plays with a lot of energy. Reminds me a lot of the way A.J. Epinesa played at Iowa, that same type of kind of block frame. Not a lot of people know him, but I think he's a guy that's a little off the radar that could help his stock this week, friend.
Ben, he mainly played inside at Notre Dame, right? And then kind of showed that edge flexibility late. That's the deal with Tagovailoa?
I have clips of him on the inside and the outside. I think he's been a little bit of a hybrid player. I have reps of him as a stand-up defensive end and then him whooping the left guard here of Purdue at 3-tech. So I think he's a guy that's played up and down. I'd have to check my usage notes, though.
Yeah, he
played both at East-West Shrine. Fran, he was really impressive. He's really, really strong. He has really good length. And they played him at 5 technique, and he slid inside some at 3 technique during the week, too.
Yeah, I mean, he came in at the Shrine at 6'2", 260, so I ended up bunching him with my edges, but the usage, I'm pretty sure it was more inside over the course of his career, especially. So an interesting skill set for sure. Guys, let's round out the edge group. Who helps themselves the most with a huge performance? Jordan, you can kick us off.
So this is a name we have not mentioned yet, and I was able to see this guy live against East Carolina. North Carolina is my neck of the woods. So Myjai Sanders from Cincinnati, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he tests. And he's probably that fringe top 50 guy right now, but if he goes out and tests well, now we're talking about a player that could go somewhere in the top 40. So keep an eye on Myjai Sanders to see how he tests. It's
a good one. Ben, how about you?
I'm using this category as my kind of stamp at home, even though we already talked about him. And George Karlaftis, I think, is going to really steal the show this week and remind everyone why he's a top 10 prospect, remind everyone why people feel like they remind him of Ryan Kerrigan, remind everybody that some of the best players in the NFL the past 2-3 seasons have been kind of clones of him, and a Trey Hendrickson and a TJ Watt for the Steelers and the Bengals, respectfully. So I think George Karlaftis is going to come right into the NFL, be dominant, be a 3-down player, but he's going to have to show out at the combine that he could still move. And he's not this stiff edge rusher that can't bend and can't play in space. I think he's going to check every box and remind us all why he's that top 10 pick.
Last category with the D tackles, I went with DeMarvin Leal, who was a top 15 type of pick in every mock draft. I'm going to go same category here, same idea with Drake Jackson from USC, was in the top half of almost every mock draft over the course of the spring and the summer and the early fall, and has fallen out of favor with people from the media side in terms of building those mock drafts out. And I think the big thing with Drake Jackson, weight fluctuated over the course of his career. He was lining up inside. He was lining up outside. Was he more of a line of scrimmage dweller? No, he got down to 255. But I think the big thing was that he just was inconsistent against the run this year. And I think that kind of knocks him a little bit. So he goes out there to Indianapolis. He has a huge week. And all of a sudden people are like, oh, yeah. Remember Drake Jackson, former big-time recruit for USC, got on the field and was one of the leaders in sacks in the Pac-12 that first year as a freshman. We'll see if he can kind of put his name back into the mix as one of the top edge rushers in this class. Let's move now to linebacker. Guys, to me, for my money, one of the best groups in this draft. Especially, I think you look at the top, you can go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deep in terms of future starters in the NFL. It's a really impressive group. Ben, I'll come to you first. A lot of options here. Who do you think really stands out in terms of their workout in Indianapolis?
Well, I'm reflecting back just a few years ago when we had a bunch of linebackers going around one. It was Kenneth Murray and Jordan Brooks and Patrick Queen. I have a handful of backers graded higher than all those cats. So I have no problem taking a good literal handful of linebackers this class in the first round. But who works out the best? Typically, I'm going to throw a dart at some of the small guys here. Zakobi Mclean out of Auburn, Brian Asamoah at Oklahoma. I hate to snipe 2 from you guys there, but they're both in that 220, 225 will run and chase type of role where I'm not so certain that their positional projection is solidified yet. I think you look at some of these hulking safety roles, the Kyle Duggars of the world, the way Adrian Amos is used up in Green Bay. Some of these run and chase will linebackers, I think you get more bang for your buck in a more hybrid skill set in space. I don't love a lot of their take on ability, but as far as working out, Brian Asamoah, Zakobi Mclean, 220, 225, they're going to be blazers this week.
I like it. For me, I'm going to go to the SEC and Damone Clark from LSU. This guy has long been on the radar as a big-time athlete, and I think he put it all together this year as a senior. 6'4", over 230 pounds, so a little bit different in terms of the body type, and a legit 6'4", right? Like he measured in 6'4" even down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. But I think when you look at his athleticism, whether it's laterally or in a straight line, this guy is all kinds of twitched up. He's explosive, really, really fluid, moving forward and in reverse. Damone Clark, LSU, put me down for this guy. Nearly 240 pounds to move the way he does. He is an absolute freak show amongst freak shows because there are a bunch of them at this position. Jordan, I'm anxious to see who you go with here.
You guys got me. All three names that I wrote down, you guys mentioned. But
luckily, there are other options in this class, too.
One person I really am looking forward to seeing is Quay Walker from Georgia. Just a towering build at 6'4", 240 pounds, and only a one-year starter at Georgia. Played behind some really good backers there, with Nakobe Dean and some other players that were there before him, Monty Rice, and then some other inside backers that they had. But I'm looking forward to seeing Quay Walker. He's one player that I'm definitely going to have a star beside to see how he tests.
This time last year, Jamin Davis was not talked about by many people as a first-round pick. And I don't know that that's going to happen with Quay Walker, but I think with Jamin Davis, it was like, man, like guys that are that big and that long and that athletic, like how long is he going to be on the board? I kind of wonder if that's going to happen with Quay Walker, and we'll see how he tests. So he very, very easily belongs in this group. So I'm glad that you brought him up. Let's go now to our stopwatch shocker, who impresses us that maybe is a little bit off the radar. And for me, I'm going to go with a guy I just watched recently, and that's Oklahoma State linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez. Former safety. He's only been playing linebacker for a couple of years. And so you expect how is he in the box? How is he in terms of taking on blocks? Like you said, Ben, earlier, hey, how is he playing in traffic? This guy defeats blocks in every which way imaginable. 5'11", just under 230 pounds. He's got really short arms, but he's played a ton of football. He's really athletic. That athleticism shows up whether he's playing sideline to sideline, if he's playing in reverse, whether he's navigating through traffic in a phone booth, all the different things that you want the athleticism to show up in. This guy does it. Didn't lose a game in his final 2 years as a starting quarterback in high school. Was a state champion wrestler. What else could this guy do? Just has been doing it at such a high level. Core special teamer over the course of his career. Malcolm Rodriguez, off the radar. He's going to test really well out in Indianapolis. I'd be shocked if he didn't. Jordan, who's one for you?
And this is one of my favorite players in this class overall, and it's Shannon Tindall from Georgia. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does in Indianapolis. And why do I feel so comfortable about his projection? Just because never started a game at Georgia. Once again, played behind some very talented linebackers, but he was their leading tackler despite never starting. He didn't start a game at all during his career. At worst, I know he's going to be a core special teamers and probably a depth guy on the next level. So I'm looking forward to seeing Shannon Tindall.
All right, Ben, take us home here. Who do you like here for this category?
Yeah, Malcolm Rodriguez has a bunch of interesting things in his profile. Another one I'll add to you, Fran. He's played 3,000 snaps and has 3 penalties.
Yeah,
how is that possible? Only 3 penalties?
Wow. And he doesn't miss tackles either. Like he's a good player.
Go do something. I mean, only 3 penalties and 3,000 snaps. You have some house money to go do something dirty after a play. But I'm going to go at Leo Chenal out of Wisconsin. And just with the disclaimer, he's 260 pounds. So don't go comparing his metrics to these 220 boys because they won't be the same. But I promise you, Leo Chenal at Wisconsin is a freak show athlete. Just remember, he's much heavier than these other linebackers, but he might break the bench record this week, guys. I know the bench is unfortunately the same day as workouts, so we unfortunately might not see a lot of benching. But Leo Chenal is a big hulking linebacker that can boogie. So he was on the freak list, and he showed it on tape too.
All right, well, let's speaking of the tape, let's go to our trusted tape for linebacker. Who's a guy we don't expect to blow up the testing, but that's okay because of how they play on tape. Jordan, I'll let you go first here.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Wyoming linebacker Chad Muma. He doesn't really strike me as a guy that's going to have very high testing numbers, but when you turn on the tape, he's everything that you look for in the position. It's fantastic with his read keys, diagnosing and attacking the first level, can play well in his loose and coverage. At 6'0", 241 pounds, he reminds you a lot of Logan Wilson coming out a few years ago, same school. Then also Nick Kwiatkowski, who is with the Raiders right now. That's another comparison that I wrote down for him. So Chad Muma, if you talk about like the New England Patriots. I think they're going to be all over him in like the second or third round. So I think he's one player that's not going to be a great tester, but if you look at the tape, you won't find any cleaner from a linebacker.
I actually think he could fit even in the stopwatch shocker category. It wouldn't shock me if he tested. I don't know if he's going to be like, especially compared to these other guys. He's not going to light it up the way that some of these other names we've already put out there. But I think Muma is a solid former safety, made the move to linebacker. I'm interested to see how he tests overall. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, Muma wins with instincts, taking proper angles and paths to the ball carrier and finishing every ball carrier. That's how he wins. So I don't think he's going to look great out there in space, in a straight line, pumping the bench press, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to go Terrell Bernard out of Baylor, who I just love his tape every time I watch it. Just doesn't have the length profile and maybe the size you want. But that Baylor Bears defense and Dave Aranda, every level, every seemingly corner of the defense, stars, playmakers, well-rounded, good FBI, just kind of leadership type of qualities from players. Terrell Bernard may not wow you with his length, his speed, his testing. Put on the film. He's a really good football player.
I'm going to round us out with a guy that I think some people might be surprised that I would throw him in here, but how about Zakobi Dean from Georgia, who is going to come in a little bit undersized. Look, he made some outstanding plays in terms of tracking to the sideline, getting guys down in the flat. He's a good tackler. All the intangibles he brings are outstanding, right? But it's kind of like what Ben said about Muma. To me, when I look at Zakobi Dean, I see a guy that he wins on instincts and toughness, taking really good angles and being a really ferocious tackler. That's the way I look at Zakobi Dean. I don't know that he's going to blow up the workout. And if he doesn't, I don't know that I would say, oh man, I'm going to look at him in a much different light. To me, I look at it and say, okay, this is the way that he wins moving forward into the NFL. Guys, let's get into the position-specific drill that stands out most. And obviously all these guys are going to be scrutinized with the way that they play in reverse. And it's a passing league in the NFL. How are you going to play in coverage? So who does it best? Ben, we'll come to you first.
All right, sniping two from you real fast because I feel confident neither of you are going this direction. But Troy Anderson, Montana State, I really like his ability to turn and run in coverage. And don't forget about Jeremiah Gemmel at North Carolina. Seems like a lot of these North Carolina prospects fell off a cliff with their stock this year and that their team wasn't that competitive. He was on everybody's radar coming into the season. Really good ability to run and chase, play in space, good instincts against play action. He was the guy this year with Chaz Surratt moving on to the NFL. Just the team didn't put up the season they had the year before. So Jeremiah Gemmel, Troy Anderson, two guys that I think definitely will look good at flipping their hips in this drill.
I don't know how fast he's going to run, but I will say that his processor, his mental capacity, faster than almost anybody I've watched in this group.
Who's that, Gemmel or Anderson?
Gemmel. He sees things so fast. An impressive player to watch on film. For me, I'm going to go Christian Harris. This is a converted high school safety who was forced into action early at Alabama. And to say, okay, well, this guy's going to come in and he's going to play Mike linebacker for Nick Saban and one of the toughest defenses to do so for one of the legendary coaches in the history of the sport, and to do it at a high level and then do it for 3 years. Like, yeah, Christian Harris is a good player, right? And that safety background shows up. He can play in reverse. He can play moving forward. He can defend the run. He plays through contact. Harris is one of the best linebackers in this class, but I would expect he'll look good in these coverage drills. Jordan, how about you?
I went with Brandon Smith from Penn State, one of the more athletic linebackers overall in this group. He does have some things that he needs to clean up from a run defense standpoint, but when you ask him to play in space, he can turn and run with the best of them. And I think he's one of the more athletic linebackers in this group, and I think he's going to look really good in this drill.
Yeah, he's the guy that I almost went with a number of times here. He is a freak athlete, and we know, coming from Penn State, he's going to test like a freak athlete. So, yeah, that's going to be a fun one to be able to watch. Let's get to our off-the-radar guy that we're just excited to see work out. And, Ben, you mentioned this guy, Troy Anderson, just now. I'm going to go with Troy Anderson, Montana State, helped lead them to an FCS championship appearance this past year for Montana State, has been a two-way player over the course of his career. He's played linebacker, he's played quarterback, he's played running back. He set a school record with 21 rushing touchdowns as a sophomore quarterback. He was first team All Big Sky that season. He's big. He moves really well. I thought he had some good flashes down at the Senior Bowl. You saw that sideline to sideline range, that ability to play through contact. Anderson is just kind of scratching the surface. And who knows? I mean, Jim Nagy has said in the past that there are some teams that view him as more like a Taysom Hill kind of option, kind of an offensive weapon. So we'll see if he even ends up on defense in the NFL. But working with the linebacker group, we'll see what Troy Anderson looks like. I'm sure he'll do some offensive drills out there in Indianapolis as well. Jordan, who's a guy off the radar for you?
So this is where I went with Zakobi Mclean, as Ben mentioned earlier. And it's very rare that you see defenders move back a level. And what I mean by that is going from linebacker to safety or D-line to linebacker. With him, I think he may have to transition to safety just because they list him at 220 pounds on the roster. But I think that's being very generous for him. And I want to mention this quote that defensive coordinator Kevin Steele said about him. He said, McLean will fight a fully cranked chainsaw. That's the type of aggressiveness that he plays with. So he has the physicality that you're looking for. And he's one player that he's just unbelievable as far as his energy and then the aggressiveness that he plays with. So a little bit off the radar right now, but I think he's one player that's going to help himself a lot.
Heat-seeking missile on film. Undersized for sure, but this guy just flies around. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, just tough when all the running backs in the SEC are the same size as you out there.
Yeah, right.
Tough business. But I'm going to go with the guys. It's easy. The lowest hanging fruit here off the radar. I got to go with the one linebacker with no career starts. Only less than 700 snaps played in his 4-year college career. That's big Shannon Tindall at Georgia. Crazy to say that for a national championship team, but he was stuck in a very deep defensive front seven with a lot of linebacker ability ahead of him. Didn't transfer, hung it out, got on the field when he could, made plays when he could. I think he's the easy pick here for off the radar.
All right, let's finish out the linebackers with who we think is going to help, who could help themselves with a huge performance. They have a huge day. Who boosts their stock the most? Jordan, who do you like here?
This is where I went with Damone Clark from LSU. And there wasn't a player I was more impressed with from a stature standpoint standing beside him at practice at the Senior Bowl than Damone Clark. He's every bit of 6'3", 240 pounds. He has that chiseled build, and I love his story. You know, he went through a lot as far as adversity, lost everything in Hurricane Katrina. There was multiple other situations of where he battled through adversity too. And he actually got benched last year. And, you know, he had to battle back through that. He ended up getting the number 18 jersey, which is very significant at LSU, along with wearing the number 7 too, like we saw with Derek Stingley. So the leadership qualities, turn on the tape of him against Alabama, he was phenomenal in that game. He didn't have any negative reps at all from what I saw. So Damone Clark, a bit polarizing right now, but I think he could help himself a lot.
I like it. He's a really fascinating player. I can't wait to see in April how these guys go off the board, because you can convince me of so many different pecking orders. Clark definitely in the mix there. Ben, who do you like?
Do you want to talk about off the radar here? I feel like I have one of the more polarizing players of the weekend, and it might surprise both of you guys to hear this name. Don't forget about him, and I'm so glad he hasn't been touched yet. Jeremiah Moon out of Florida, who was a Senior Bowl invite, had labrum surgery in November, wasn't ready, so he didn't go to the game. He should be ready for his workouts in Indy. But just to remember, 6'4", 250 outside linebacker, played some off-ball this year, nearly 35-inch arms, former 5-star recruit, all sorts of ability and range and length, loves spin moves. He's a loose pass rusher. Reminds me a lot of like a Jordan Jenkins type of player. Or maybe like a Lorenzo Carter. Don't forget about him. He has a lot of ability and may have his best football ahead of him. Only played a little over 1,000 snaps in 5 years at Florida. So one of those types there that never really found his full-time role. But don't forget about him. Jeremiah Moon, a lot of ability.
I did have something I want to add. So I did hear this from a couple scouts about Moon, is that there's going to be some that ask him to go with the tight ends.
Interesting.
Oh, interesting. I love that.
So that is something I did hear about him.
Guys, we haven't mentioned Devin Lloyd yet. And Devin Lloyd, potentially a first-round pick, I think is going to test really, really well. So I don't even know if a huge performance is going to really boost his stock, because he's already in round 1 mock drafts, sometimes in the top 10, top 15. But I think it's notable for anybody that's listening to this and that doesn't know this class all that well. Devin Lloyd from Utah, hyper athletic, really, really physically gifted. A couple of years ago, that 2020 draft, Utah had like 10 guys on that defensive side of the football. He was the lone underclassman, and all those guys pointed to Devin Lloyd saying he's going to be the next guy up, and he has done nothing but live up to that billing. He's really, really athletic. He's physical. I think his instincts have gotten better over the course of his career, but he's got 3-down potential for sure moving into the NFL. Guys, let's go into the secondary at corner. Ben, I'll go to you first. Who works out best? Who is the guy that you're expecting to post the best athletic testing across the board? I think Andrew Booth will be one of the big winners of the week. I think he's just eager to show out what he can do in a linear sense, his speed, explosiveness, change of direction, ball skills. He's going to check every box this week. Andrew Booth, Clemson, big winner of the week.
Yeah, he is an absolute freak show, and I agree. I think he's going to test really, really well. We're going to go with another guy that's going to be in this the top part of the draft, and that's Derek Stingley from LSU. 6'1", 194 pounds, one of the best prospects, regardless of position. I think the big thing with Derek Stingley that we kind of forget about is that this guy's just one of the most physically gifted players in this class. Like, I know he hasn't played all that much the last couple of years due to injury and all this, but I think when you look at Stingley, it's very similar to me with Marshawn Lattimore when Lattimore was coming out of Ohio State. Lattimore's profile is a little bit different in that his final year was the big year, and the first couple of years he didn't really see much of him. And there were questions about his competitiveness and his ability to kind of fight through soft tissue injuries and all that stuff with Lattimore. And he comes in and he's one of the best corners in the NFL right away. We'll see if that happens with Stingley, but I think he's got that kind of ability. The first true freshman in LSU history to start every game. First team All-American as a true freshman for the national title winners. Derek Stingley, I mean, there's not a lot to say about this kid. He's as gifted as it gets. I would expect that he's going to look really, really good in shorts and a T-shirt out in Indianapolis. Jordan, how about you here?
This may be a bit of a bold prediction, but I think the biggest winner overall, regardless of position, is going to be Kyler Gordon, the cornerback from Washington. I think he's going to put on an absolute show. I think he's going to run in the 4.4s. He's probably going to jump 40+ in the vertical, and he's probably going to broad 11+ too. So I think he's going to be the biggest winner coming out of the combine.
He's been on Bruce Feldman's freak list, I think, each of the last 3 years, at least the last two. I know Jimmy Lake, the former head coach there, said he's the most athletic defensive back he's ever coached, and he's coached a bunch of them. So Kyler Gordon, a guy definitely to keep an eye on here, Ben.
Yeah, one of my area scout friends said look for him to have a workout and a rise like Byron Jones did a few years ago coming out of UConn.
All right, I'll keep an eye on the broad jump then. Byron Jones setting the mark there in that test. Let's go now to our stopwatch shocker, a guy that impresses us maybe a little bit off the radar at this point. I'm going to go back to the SEC. It's very rare that an Alabama corner is kind of underrated, but I think that's the case with Jalen Armour-Davis from the Crimson Tide. He is more like that timeline that I talked about earlier with Lattimore, and that he barely played his first couple years on campus. He had the red shirt, he had an injury, just hasn't played a ton. Came in this year, started a bunch of games. He's really, really gifted. He's 6'1", he's like 190-ish pounds, but you see the recovery speed, you see the quickness in and out of breaks. The tools are all there. I would expect that he's a guy that's going to test well that maybe we're not necessarily talking about right now. Jalen Armour-Davis from Alabama. Jordan, how about you? Who do you like here for this category?
Yeah, and I think this player could contend to run the fastest 40 that we'll see. And it's Calen Barnes from Baylor. Get your stopwatch out when this guy runs, just because. And I want to make sure I get these numbers right. He's actually he was a member of Baylor's track team. He was a high school state champion in Texas in 2017 and 2018, a 10.04 in the 100 and a 20.55 in the 200, which is blazing fast. So keep an eye on him.
He's a guy was just one of many Baylor athletes that they've plucked from the outstanding track program in the state of Texas. And they just said, hey, come and learn how to play football. Calen Barnes, really impressive track athlete. Ben, let's go to you for your stopwatch shocker.
Yeah, that's big time 100-meter speed. That's not like, he's going to be football fast. No, that's like borderline Olympic trials fast. So I'm just catching up on some Jeremiah Moon Hoover High School tight end highlights here. But another guy that may challenge for the fastest 40 of the week, and maybe one of the more unknown players in this class, that's Isaac Taylor Stewart out of Southern California, who was actually mocked in the first round by Todd McShay last spring in his way too early 2022 mock draft that you get out right after the previous draft happened. So that was just kind of speaking to his thoughts and projections on him. Maybe didn't have the season we all had hoped, but this is a low 4.3 kid challenging into the 4.2s and had no problem whooping Rondale Moore in a race in high school, a guy that ran 4.3 himself just 2 years ago as well. So Isaac Taylor Stewart, tall, long, fast corner, USC, a little bit unknown at this point.
I love it. Well, let's go to our trust the tape, guys. We don't expect to necessarily test well. Jordan, we'll come to you first for the corners.
Yeah, and this is a corner I'm a fan of. He just has to be in the right scheme. And it's Martin Emerson Jr. from Mississippi State. Big corner, 6'2", 200 pounds. Doesn't strike me as an overly twitchy guy. Does have some stiffness in his hips when he's playing press or off man. They have played some zone. He has played some side saddle, turn his back to the sideline in that scheme. But he doesn't come across as an overly twitchy type of player, somebody that has good COD, changes direction. So Martin Emerson Jr., love his tape, but don't think he's going to be one of the more better testers in this group.
That's a great call. He's a guy I definitely fits this category. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, it's a great name right there. I'm going to go Zakobi Mclean out of Cincinnati. The guy that played opposite of Ahmad Gardner, had a really strong year, I believe winning the Jim Thorpe Award, if I'm not mistaken. Fran, as he's shaking his head, confirming. He's a guy that he may be like a 4.58, 4.55 type of guy, but he wins with really good discipline, technique, strength at the top of the route, in the route stem, good ball skills, kind of checks every box, just doesn't have any natural gifts that he leans on to get the job done. And that's okay. He's a technician with really good tape, with a feisty kind of tenacious play personality. So Zakobi Mclean may not wow you with the tests. Go back to the tape. More than enough on the film.
That's exactly how I feel too about Roger McCreary, who's already going to get dinged on the body type. We already heard about that down at the Senior Bowl with the arm length and things like that. I think just like the frame, I think that his athleticism and his makeup speed McCreary, they're fine. They're not liabilities, but I think that they're just fine when you look at contextually against other corners. The big thing that makes him stand out, his toughness, his competitiveness, his instincts, his ball skills, also his versatility. He can play man, zone, press, off, inside, outside. I think when you look at McCreary, he checks a lot of the boxes. He's just not like A+ from a physical standpoint. So to me, I'm going to lean on the tape there. If he doesn't run super, super well or blow the doors off the workout, I'm not going to knock Roger McCreary from that standpoint. Guys, there's another drill that was introduced. Ben, I'm interested to get your thoughts. Are they bringing the box drill back they had it in 2020. It was a new drill. That's coming back here this year?
Yep, box drills back. Terrell Austin drills are back. The DB
Beautiful.
ones from 2020 are back.
All right, so the box drill. Basically, what you're going to see is the DB going to a back pedal. Then they're going to drive forward. They're going to come to bounce. Then they're going to turn and run like they're carrying a vertical route before they break on the football one last time. So lots of movement. Guys that can control their speed. They can govern their speed. They can gear up. They can gear down. They can stay balanced and finish on the football. Who runs it best? Ben, we'll go to you first since you are the local expert on this drill.
Yeah, it's kind of a modified version of the W drill with a little bit more opening up your hips on one of the change of direction. So we're looking for short area burst, loose hips, typewriter feet. I'm going to Zakobi Mclean, who may be one of the smaller guys out there in that DB group, but I think this type of drill is perfect for his skill set. And a guy I do not forget about, Zakobi Mclean, South Carolina State. They've pumped it together enough pros over the last few years, and Darius Leonard and Javon Hargrave and a bunch of other guys. Zakobi Mclean. He'll be small out there, but this is his drill.
I love that. That's a great one. I'm going to go with a guy that's got a similar body type in Houston's Marcus Jones. We haven't talked about him yet. 9 return touchdowns in between a kick return and punt return this year, over the course of his career, I should say. Marcus Jones, one of the more dynamic returners in this class, but don't knock what he does on defense as well. He's got inside-outside versatility, and he takes the ball away. Really fluid athlete. So I think when you look at Marcus Jones, his change of direction, his short area burst, his ability to finish, Marcus Jones, he should look good in the box drill. Jordan, who do you like here?
I went with Trent McDuffie from Washington, staying with those Washington corners, who I think both are going to be out of the roof as far as testers. But when we're talking about their technique with McDuffie, he has outstanding feet. He has good patience at the line of scrimmage. But I think one of the better or more underrated qualities about his technique is just how he can turn and run with the best of them. So Trent McDuffie, I think he has one of the best or polished techniques in this class overall. So I think he's going to knock it out of the park with this drill.
A guy that's in a lot of round one mock drafts. So someone who's definitely on the radar. Let's now talk about a couple of guys that are off the radar that we're just excited to see work out. I'll start off with Joshua Williams, the corner from Fayetteville State, was down at the Senior Bowl. And he looked as good as any corner, just like off the cuff, just looking at him, just up close, getting up on top of the guy. He just carries his pads really well, looks the part, he moves fluidly. So I'm excited to see Joshua Williams and how he tests, how he works out overall in Indianapolis. He'd be my pick here for an off-the-radar guy. Jordan, who do you like here?
Yeah, and just piggybacking off of you with Josh. Josh is a big-time track guy, track athlete coming out too, so I think he could put up some really good numbers. Now, this guy isn't off the radar, but he has been over the past few months just because you see a lot of these top prospects making TV appearances, talking to the media, but ever since he suffered his injury, we have not heard anything from him at all, and it's Derek Stingley Jr. I think this is the type of environment to where he can come back and he announced his presence, of where I was the CB1 coming into the year. Everybody had me mocked in the top 3. I still am that type of guy. Even though he can't prove his durability in an arena like this, he can put up some really good testing numbers and just announce his presence back as CB1.
We were talking like back in the spring and summer, like, is it conceivable to take Derek Stingley like number 1 overall? Like, is he that kind of player? Like, he is an outstanding physical specimen. So I agree with you there in terms of being off the radar. Ben, who do you like here?
Well, I'd have to give it up to one of the few D2, D3 FCS kids because there aren't a whole lot. That's going to be Sam Webb out of Missouri Western. I just want to see what he looks like. Watched a couple of his game tapes, which, by the way, D2 school, outstanding film. Not the quality of it, but literally it's just clear, it's crisp, it's steady, beautiful field, really well done facilities out there. Just having really crisp, clean video from these schools that maybe don't have the same resources as the SEC schools around here just makes it easier to watch these kids and put together an appropriate evaluation. So Sam Webb, I'm glad he got the invite. Let's see what he's got out there in shorts and a t-shirt.
We know how big these events are for small school players. Now, round this out with the corners. Who has a chance to help themselves the most with a huge performance? Who can boost their stock most here in Indianapolis? Jordan, we'll come to you first.
So I do have an admission. I wrote it down on my notepad wrong, so I had it backwards with the category. So with this category, I wanted Derek Stingley Jr. For the last category, I actually had Cam Taylor-Britt from Nebraska written down. I was blown away by his film as far as his technique, but I think the best part of his game is just his ball skills. I think his ability to fight through contact and being able to fight through the hands of wide receivers at the catch point, or what is called the moment of truth. I think he has the best tape of any cornerback in this class. So keep an eye on Cam Taylor-Britt from Nebraska.
Really thickly built corner. He just really looks the part. Ben, how about you?
I'm going to go with Tariq Woolen, actually, at a UTSA. Really good size. Has been on the freak list, I think, a couple times for his jumps and speed. I think he's just going to stand out in that DB group, and I think he's going to be a top performer in a number of the tests. And I think they're just going to see excellent day 3 value, special teams, versatility all day long when you're watching this kid out in Indianapolis. So Tariq Woolen, UTSA, really good program out there. Don't sleep on the Roadrunner.
If you didn't take him just now, I was going to. I think he could be like one of the top testers, regardless of position, in the running to be one of the fastest 40s at the event, regardless of position. So I'm glad you brought up Tariq Woolen. I'll stay with another Tariq here, and Tariq Castro Fields from Penn State. And this is a guy that I think kind of like McCreary, where he just checks a lot of boxes, but I don't know that it's elite in any one sense. But when you look at, again, going back to Penn State, those guys have really outperformed what you were maybe have expected of them going to the combine. So if Tariq Castro Fields comes off and blows our socks off with how he works out, now all of a sudden it's like, oh man, like this guy's a great athlete. And you watch some of the plays he makes on the ball, and he's really feisty, and he's got inside-outside versatility. Now all of a sudden we're talking about Tariq Castro Fields on day 2, right? So that's a guy that I think has that ability to really see his stock balloon here in Indianapolis. Last category, guys, we're going to go safety, and we'll see with who works out best. Ben, who's the workout warrior from this group for you?
I'm actually going to go with a bit of a hybrid player that may look like a corner. He's been playing that nickel spot for most of his career for Michigan the last 3 years, and that's Daxton Hill, who I think is going to be a blazer with speed, have some of the loosest hips, whether it's turning and running or change of direction, great ball skills. He's a guy that's an exceptional athlete. Don't forget, 5-star Alabama flip at the last minute, then went to Michigan. Exceptional athlete that I think is just scratching the surface with his football ability, and will probably be a better player on Sundays.
One guy reported numbers on him working out, Jaquan Brisker from Penn State, free safety, 6'1", 210 pounds. The reported numbers on him are silly, like in the 4.3s in the 40, under 4 seconds in the short shuttle, over 10 feet in the broad, over just under 39 inches in the vert, at 6'1", 210. Yeah, like that is absolute freak show performance. Yeah, he went to Penn State. We're going to get into that as we've talked about a number of times. But this is a guy that I think when you look at Brisker, he could have one of the best workouts regardless of position in this class. Watch out for him in Indianapolis. Jordan, who do you like here in this one?
And I went with Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. It may seem like a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I think Kyle Hamilton is going to put up some freaky numbers when it's all said and done. At 6'4", 215 pounds. Everybody's seen the play of him coming off the hash against Florida State and having the interception on the sideline. I think that type of stuff translate over to what we could see in Indy.
Let's go to our next one here, our stopwatch shockers. And for me, I'm really fascinated by Marquise Bell from Florida A&M, 6'2", 200 pounds. He's got anacondas for arms, 33-inch long arms, high school quarterback and wide receiver and defensive back, really settled in at free safety. He's a 4-star athlete recruit coming out of Bridgeton, New Jersey, goes to Maryland. only lasts there for like a year, transfers to JUCO, ends up at Florida A&M, and watching him down there, he's really, really fun to watch. I actually compared him to Jaquiski Tart when Tart was coming out of Samford, and I think they're very similar kind of body types and skill sets. He's a good athlete. He's got a good feel in the run game. He's a really disciplined, sound tackler who can bring his feet and finish. So I think when you look at Bell, this is a guy that I think is going to test better than people think, and he can really kind of put himself more on the radar of that day 2 discussion at the safety position. He's a really fun player to watch, guys. Jordan, I'll come to you next.
And I went with a bit of an under-the-radar player here, and he was in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and it's Tyson Anderson from Toledo. He's played some single high. He's played some low safety too. And he was really versatile in that defense. So he showed some real good speed coming downhill and some good athleticism in that defense too. They kind of used him all over the place, but primarily as that single high guy on the roof coming downhill, he showed some really nice run stops and run support. So I think that type of athleticism could translate over.
Yeah, he came in a little smaller than I thought in Mobile, but this guy, he's an intriguing player with his skill set for certain. A guy that's got matchup capabilities versus tight ends. He did some wide receiver DB one-on-ones as well down there at the Senior Bowl. So an intriguing blend of skills there for Tyson Anderson. Ben, who do you like here for this category?
So stopwatch shocker, I could go with JT Woods, who's on Baylor's track team, but he's a hurdler, 110-meter guy. So we got to go Nick Cross out of Maryland, who was also on Maryland's track team for what? 60 meters, 100 meters, short area burst stuff. Look out for Nick Cross at 6'1", 215 with length, long stride, speed, ball skills. Right. Look for him to be one of the risers of the week, who I don't think is getting nearly enough buzz and attention.
It's a good call. I let Nick Cross, a good pick there. Let's go trust the tape here. Don't expect this guy to initially blow up the athletic testing portion, but that's all right. Jordan, who do you like here for this one?
Yeah, so I went with another player that I was able to see down at East Carolina in person is Brian Cook, the safety from Cincinnati. And he just has that no-nonsense type of attitude. Seeing him warm up, dude did not crack a smile at all during the entire warm-up, just all business. Actually started his career at Howard, and that was his only offer coming out of high school, and ended up transferring to Cincinnati, and he played really well. Their tone setter, he kind of was the muscle of that secondary who everybody relied on.
Just a rock solid player. Like, just a good football player that just checks a lot of boxes. And I agree. Like, if he doesn't test all that well, that's okay, because the film kind of speaks for itself there. Ben, who do you like for this category?
Yeah, I thought I had the low-hanging fruit here. Instincts, angles, toughness, versatility. That's Jalen Petrie out of Baylor, who, also may be a high 4.5 guy and maybe won't wow you with his change of direction and movement stuff. He's just a playmaker, and he's a guy that plays with exceptional instincts and plays so much bigger than that 195-pound frame would ever suggest. I think I'm willing to call him a big nickel, that big slot, even though he may look like a small nickel. He is a big-time player out there, just may not be the most exciting tester this week.
I agree. He was great at the Senior Bowl, and that's a good environment for him. I don't know that the Combine's a great environment for Jalen Petrie. He was on my list for who I was going to talk about. So if you didn't talk about him, I was going to bring him up. Instead, I'm going to go with one of my favorite players to study in this position group, and that was Lewis Cine from Georgia, one of the best alley defenders that I've watched in recent memory. Playing from Georgia, he was a top-down defender, did an outstanding job attacking blocks downhill, finishing as a tackler, very few misses on film. He just didn't make impact plays, right? And I don't know that like his athleticism, especially like the linear stuff and moving in reverse, like that's not necessarily his game. I think he'll run fairly well. I think the jumps will be fine for Lewis Cine. I don't know if he's going to like blow the doors off that workout, but overall, like if he doesn't work out all that great, Lewis Cine's a really good football player. Guys, we talked about it in the last segment, the box drill. Well, they do that same drill with the safeties. So we're going to go same exact drill. Who blows this up? Ben, we'll go to you. Who do you think runs the box drill best from the safety position?
Again, the short area quicks, the hips, the burst speed. I'll go Kirby Joseph at Illinois, who I think has really good fluidity and change of direction. I'm interested to see what he runs in a straight line as well, because he's shown some really good range on the back end, but a guy that plays with really loose hips, and want to see if he can be a man coverage guy at the next level as well. So interested to see the short area bursts and the change of directions, but I think he'll look good.
You talked about Daxton Hill from Michigan at the top of the safety group. I'm going to talk about Veron Mckinley from Oregon, 5'11", just under 200 pounds. played a very similar role over the course of his career. Was a nickel corner, also played some deep safety as well. But I think when you look at McKinley, his short area quickness, his ability to finish on the ball, his ability to kind of control his speed, he's a guy I think has that ability to really do well in that drill. I would keep an eye on McKinley. I expected him to do a little bit more down at the Senior Bowl. He didn't quite splash the way I expected he would, but I think this would be a good drill for him. He was a finalist for the Thorpe Award, 6 picks and 6 pass breakups this year for the Ducks. Jordan, who do you like here for this category?
I actually went with Jalen Petrie right here, and he answered a lot of questions that I had about him coming into Mobile, just because he primarily played that big nickel, as been mentioned. Strong safety, really was kind of that sniffer around the line of scrimmage. But seeing him out in coverage, going one-on-one against tight ends and also running backs, I was really surprised with his fluidity. And his resume reminds me so much of Javon Holland coming out of Oregon. Opted out the final year there, but if you remember, his final year, he played primarily strong safety. So the big question about him was, can he hold up in coverage? Can he play single high? I don't think Petrie is a single high type of guy, but if you ask him to play strong safety, I think he can hold up there. He's one of my favorite players in this class. I'm a big fan of Petrie.
Petrie's a fun player. Let's go off the radar here. It's just someone we're excited to see work out. You mentioned Tyson Anderson earlier from Toledo, Jordan. So I'm going to go actually someone different here. I was going to pick him there, but I'm going to go Bubba Bolden from Miami. And this is a guy that had a really strong junior season in 2020. Injuries kind of derailed his senior year, but he has got sideline to sideline range. He can create the big play. It's almost like last year there was Andre Cisco out of Syracuse, where as many good plays as you saw, there were some of those bad plays where there were missed tackles, just missed plays of the ball. I think you see the same thing with Bubba Bolden and also some injury issues. But when you look at the on-field traits, I think Bubba Bolden is going to look really good in the workout. I'm excited to see how he looks in position drills and also in the athletic testing. Hopefully he can go. I know that he was kind of hobbled leaving the season, going to the Shrine Bowl. We'll see with Bubba Bolden from Miami, former big-time recruit, went to USC out of high school. Jordan, who do you like here for this category?
Yeah, Ben spilled the beans on my guy. I was hoping I would be able to mention him first in this category, and it's Nick Cross from Maryland. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's flying under the radar, one of the more underrated players overall in this class. Was benched after that blowout loss to Northwestern in the season opener. But that kind of was an eye-opening moment for him, and they played him in a true single high role. I think he has hash-to-hash range. I wouldn't say sideline to sideline. I think he has hash-to-hash range. I think that's fair for him. But as far as a special teamer, he has it. Single high safety, he has it. He's fantastic coming down and run support. Would like to see him be a little bit more under control coming downhill, just because he's all or nothing now. When he's coming downhill, he has some big time hits. So Nick Cross, keep an eye on him.
He's got some really, really impressive highlights, both as in pass coverage and as a run defender. Ben, who do you like here for this final pick for this category?
An off the radar guy, I'm going to pick a Big Ten defensive back, and that's Dane Belton out of Iowa. Kind of a nickel safety hybrid player. And as a close, I was just about to say, we don't typically get a lot of DBs out of Iowa. I guess we kind of do with Desmond King and Josh Jackson, and Monty Hooker is playing good football for the Tennessee Titans. They've been pumping out a lot of pros. So Dane Belton had 5 picks in 2021. Really interesting athlete that a lot of people may not have gotten their hands on his tape yet. So true junior out of Iowa.
And they've got a couple more coming down the pipe as well. Next year, we'll be talking about a couple of those guys. Guys, let's round this out. Who helps themselves the most at the safety position with a huge performance at the combine? Jordan, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, I went with Daxton Hill right here. And we've mentioned him a ton during this segment, and I think he's going to help himself a lot, stamping a lot of what we thought of him. And one thing I do want to mention about him is that I think he's a classic case of, just because he wasn't asked to do it, that doesn't mean that he can't do it. Just because he was playing nickel primarily at Michigan, that doesn't mean that he can't play on the roof or he can't play primarily strong safety. So the more you can do at safety, the better. But I think with his numbers, I think he's going to help himself a lot.
And they left him in the slot against like Jackson Smith and Jigba and some of the best receivers that they faced, and they were perfectly fine with it. His coverage skills, really, really impressive. No reason to think he can't go out and play deeper down the field. Ben, who do you like here?
I'm going to go with Lewis Sine. So I think a lot of people maybe have some questions on his strength and straight line speed and ability to work out. And once you start removing these Georgia Bulldogs away from the scheme, I think he's an outstanding player. I think he's going to be one of the best testers of the week. And I think he's going to stamp and double stamp a first round grade on his projection and evaluation after this week in Indy.
I'm going to go with a guy that I would venture to guess, and there's no way to prove this, but all these like the mock draft generators, all the fan mock drafts, right? Nobody has seen their name go off the board in more fan mock drafts on day 3 than Auburn safety Smoke Monday, because every fan is like, I got to take Smoke Monday, right? So to me, when you watch Smoke Monday, he is a really explosive athlete. And so if you're seeing like a guy that, and he's got some inconsistencies to his game, kind of similar to what I talked about with Bubba Bolden, with some of the missed tackles, just kind of playing out of control. But if he goes and he tests the way I think he's capable of testing, you're going to start to see like he could go off the board a little bit earlier than you think at that position. So I'll go Smoke Monday here as a guy on day 3 that could really kind of boost his stock with a strong performance in Indianapolis. Guys, I got to think we hit like almost 300 or almost 100 names here, almost 3 digits, a ton of names. Jordan, thanks so much for taking all the time to join us here this week on the Journey to the Draft podcast. Ben, we will catch up with you out in Indianapolis. It's been a really fun week. We've hit on a bunch of names. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.
So great stuff there from Ben Fennell and Jordan Reid, who you can follow on Twitter at Jordan_Reid. Really, really appreciate him jumping on for as long as he did with us for the podcast. Let's now get to a question from you at home. Do Senate left a 5-star review. And again, the best way to reach us is to head on over to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, wherever you listen. Leave us that review. If it's 5 stars, that'd be great. Leave us that review. If you've got a question, we'll answer it here on an upcoming show. Do has a question here. Said, trade down is the question. Fran, great show as always. Although obviously we are still very early in the process and the combine should force us to adjust our thinking, there seems to be a large group in the middle to back half of the first round that both fit the Eagles' needs and are very good players. With that in mind, do you see the Eagles trading down with at least one of those picks to perhaps help address some other needs as well? I'm just so excited about the myriad of prospects that are all seemingly being slotted for the back half of the first to early second round that it might make sense to trade back and fill another need as well. Keep up the great work. So do Senate. Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's one that really you could say this for every draft, is that a lot of the time, and that's why a lot of people believe in trading down. And we've seen this time and time again. A number of franchises have had success. And sometimes, look, you still need to hit the picks, but a lot of teams will look to trade down because a lot of people look at that meat of the back end of round 1 through round 2, that is the strength of the draft in terms of there are always so many players that can be valued in that part of draft weekend. And so, yeah, like that's absolutely something that's in play. And the Eagles, just like every team, they're going to have those conversations. Those conversations are starting right now as we speak, just kind of gauging how teams feel about moving up, moving back. Do they want to stay put? Are they looking for certain positions? You'll get to those specifics a little bit later down the road. But those discussions about trying to feel out which teams are up for moving up and which teams are moving back, you'll start those conversations now. But the big thing, and you always hear this, when it comes to, oh yeah, we want to trade back or we want to get picks for next year. Well, it takes 2 to tango. You need somebody to want to trade up and give you those extra assets, right? So we'll see if that's something that happens here for the Eagles. They've got pick number 15, pick 16, and pick 19. So you've got those 3 picks jumbled up together in 4 selections. We'll see if they're able to move or if they want to try and see if they want to stay put with those 3 picks. It'll be something, obviously, we'll all be following here in the coming weeks and months. But great question there from Deuce Senate. Hopefully something that we'll get some clarity on as we get closer and closer to the draft. Remember that the Eagles made that trade from 6 to to 12 or 6 to 11 last year, right around this time. It was right around combine time when they made that move. And so we'll see if the Eagles make something like that, or if they wait until they get to draft weekend, or if they just stay put and make those picks right where they stand at this point. So do Senate, thanks so much for the 5-star review. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's episodes here of the Journey to the Draft podcast. We covered a lot of players, tried to make sure we always connect the player to the school. We'll be talking about them all week long out in Indianapolis next week. We've got a few interviews already lined up for the Combine. We're going to have daily episodes that are going to start, I believe, on Tuesday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all through next week, covering all the action from Indianapolis. We're going to have player availability, coach and GM availability. Hopefully some head coaches and GMs join us here on the show. We'll also have, obviously, reactions to the workouts. We'll be talking with other media personalities. It should be a great week of action from Indianapolis. We'll be breaking it down right here on the Journey to the Draft podcast presented by Life Brand.